All right, welcome in. Hope you enjoyed the bye week. It is the Eyes on Texas multicast, Texas Houston preview edition. We're coming to you live from the capital city of the great state of Austin, overlooking downtown Austin and the University of Texas. Welcome to the weekly, at least this week, program that understands the pride and tradition of the Texas football program will never be entrusted to the timid of the week. We're going to take you inside, talk about it in all phases. We're a product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network, powered by our presenting partner at Grande Equipment and our other founding partners we'll tell you about throughout the broadcast to get you ready for Texas and Houston. The first matchup of the old Southwest Conference rivals in more than 2 decades, the first with the two as members of the Big 12 and the last of the two as members of the Big 12 Conference. It is the Eyes on Texas multicast. I mentioned that I am here in the great city of Austin, Texas, the capital city, the home of the University of Texas. Mike Craven is not. You are in your favorite city in Texas, you've told us before, here on the EO2. I like your hotel room there in beautiful El Paso.
Yep, had some L&J's Cafe yesterday. It was incredible. Some Lucy's this morning for breakfast. So enjoying the time so far in El Paso. And tonight, UTEP plays New Mexico State for the 100th time. So it should be a cool little rivalry here in the Southwest Conference or Southwest part of the country. The first time that they're playing as conference members since 1961 when the Border Conference still existed. So pretty cool historical thing going on here in El Paso.
How far are those schools apart, Mike? Do we know? I mean, they've played
about 40 miles, 41 miles, I think.
Just across the border, obviously, into New Mexico. And then good game tonight. We'll obviously, you'll be covering it for Dave Campbell's Texas football. And where will you be traveling to for Saturday's college football contests?
H-Town, 3rd Ward, Texas versus Houston, going to get down there. I would advise everybody to get there 3 or 4 hours early. The traffic is going to be horrendous. Scott Street is not built for what's about to happen there. So get there early. It's going to be a fun game, but it's going to be a headache if you get there an hour or two before the game.
Well, that's a great way to start because folks who are watching and are going to be headed down there on the Eyes on Texas multicast, this is a sellout. It's going to be 40,000 people. That is the capacity of the TDECU stadium that they've built. They got that built under Tony Levine, right? When Tony Levine was still the coach, they began that process, and then Tom Herman came in, and now it's of course Dana Holgerson in charge there, and they've really invested in the program. They're 3-3 right now, Houston, but give that your quick. You said get there early, but any tips? Where to avoid, ways to come in, any trap door kind of things?
No, the problem with going to Houston is it's in the middle of 3rd Ward. It's in the middle of the city, right? It's 2-lane roads, stoplights, and they close a lot of it down. And so if you see a place to park and you don't already have prepaid parking, I would advise just to go park right where you see it, because a lot of that stuff gets blockaded. You can't get around the stadium very well. And so if you end up on the wrong side of the stadium, it's hard to get to the other side. So that's why I say get there early. You can avoid some of that traffic, meet a lot of the people that get there. And if you get turned around, you have some time to figure it out. I go there at least once a year and I get turned around trying to find where I'm supposed to park. So it can be a headache for sure.
Yeah, 3:00 kick on Saturday. Longhorns coming off the bye week. We'll talk all things Texas offense against the Houston defense, Houston against Texas on the other way. And some special teams thoughts. Also get you our predictions on this game and some big games around the Big 12 as well to get you ready for. Obviously, we did not have a first of the week edition because the Longhorns didn't play last week. We will talk about the improvements that Steve Sarkisian believes they made. Also get you an injury update. Should tell you that the Eyes on Texas multicast is brought to you and presented by our partners at Grande Equipment. Our great friend and partner Wes Murray and his team who understand that your reputation when a project is needed to be done is all you have. It's a timeline, budget, keep them online. And that's what Grande Equipment works with you, partners with you on. Any project of any size or scale, all that matters is getting it done on budget. Grande has operated this way for 31 years. They're a local independent heavy equipment dealer, renting and buying, purchasing. When you need the right piece of equipment for your project, they get what you want on time, job site ready, hassle-free every single time. Wes and his team understand this because they've earned your business. You're going to use Grande. That's the beginning of the relationship. They don't abandon your side until it is done and on budget and done the correct way. And they, as an independent dealer, they get you equipment from all major manufacturers: Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, Volvo. Not locked into just one. It's heavy equipment, sales and rentals, Grande Equipment, also that new renewable energy sector as well, supporting the pile driver application. They're the best. Grande Equipment presenting you the Eyes on Texas multicast all season long. Find them online at grandeequipment.com. They don't overpromise, they over-deliver. All right, Mike, bye bye week came at a good time for Texas. I think that's fair to say, right in the middle of a 12-game season, 6 games in, 6 to go. And, when last we spoke, we were talking about a heartbreaking loss to Oklahoma. And it was fair to say that Oklahoma exposed some issues for Texas that maybe they weren't aware of. They hadn't played a really top-end quarterback like Dylan Gabriel. They hadn't played a quarterback in a pass-first offense. And they had something to work on. The red zone continues to be a big problem for Texas as well. I think those had to have been, in addition to getting healthy and getting some guys fresh for the second half, I think those would be the 2 biggest factors of, dealing with a pass-first offense, tackling pass rush lanes on defense, and then offensively trying to figure out this red zone thing, because the Longhorns are in the 120s nationally in red zone performance right now.
Yeah, red zone offense, figuring out how to execute what your best plays are down there, who your best guys are to figure out down there, maybe what Quinn is seeing, what he's not seeing on some of those red zone calls that are being made. The turnover stuff's kind of fluky. Ewers hadn't turned the ball over a lot this year. He had a tough game against Oklahoma, especially early on there with 3 turnovers. But Oklahoma's turned teams over all year. Like that's what they're really good at. They're a top 15, top 20 defense in terms of turnovers per game. Houston is not any of those things. They do not have a great defense. They don't turn the ball over. So this one figures to set up a little bit more for Texas. But coming off of a big loss, I think there's 2 schools of thought there. I think a lot of people want to get right back onto the field, to kind of get that negativity out of there, not have 2 weeks of talking points about it, just go out there and get a win. But I do think you're right. I think it was the right time to get them a bye week. You get some guys healthy. Everybody's banged up after 6 weeks of football. Even if you're not on the injured reserve or anything, you're hurting if you played 6-7 weeks of college football. Get back on the drawing board, clean some of that stuff up. And so, it's always good to have it in the middle of the season. I always feel bad for teams that have it on like week 3 or week 4 before you really get rolling and really need it. So it did feel like a good time to kind of get it with Texas. You could reset and look at the second half of the season as the rest of the season.
No question about that. And at his Monday news conference this week, Steve Sarkisian was very optimistic and pleased that, all the injured guys that we talked about going into the break and the off week practiced at least on Monday. And that included, he talked about even Jake Majors. There was some reporting from some of the Longhorn-centric sites that Jake Majors suffered a high ankle sprain against Oklahoma, and he may be out 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. But there he was, according to Sark, on the field practicing on Monday, which would indicate that report not true, that he's ahead of schedule and it might not be as severe. Also, you're dealing with Cole Hudson at right guard, who also happens to be the backup center. You also are dealing with injuries at JT Sanders, trying to get back from that ankle, and Ryan Watts at cornerback. And, Jalen Catalon, we saw him start the Oklahoma game and not finish, but Sark didn't even mention him. He just said everybody who had been banged up was healthy. He said during the bye week, they got the starters, essentially the veteran guys, off their feet. They didn't practice much, really let them refresh their legs. And they really went hard with the 1s and 2s, or the 2s and 3s, I should say. The backups really tried to keep the practice intensity up, but doing it with the guys down the depth chart to get them re-sparked. Because a lot of times during the season, they don't get a lot of reps during the week-to-week grind. So that was really the MO. And then, those guys came back fresh. And Sark did say that by the end of the week, he'll know for sure who can go, who could handle the 2 real physical practices Tuesday and Wednesday was going to be a factor, especially for guys like Jake Majors and Cole Hudson. Sark did say, Mike, that Cole Hudson was the most limited on Monday, most limited of the injured players, which, but he was out there, which leads you to think that this could be a pretty healthy football team when they play Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, that's good news for Texas. You need all those bodies. That's what the bye week is for. So yeah, that's good.
That is good. And so now the Longhorns turning their attention to the Houston Cougars, who we know are 3-3. When last we saw the Cougars, Mike, they were winning with a Hail Mary. A Hail Mary last Thursday. They had a bye week into that Thursday contest with West Virginia. Then they win that game, so they've had a week off, and then 10 days from Thursday night to Saturday. They should be pretty darn fresh too. It's a Dana Holgorsen team that you wrote the preview on. A lot of question marks, a lot of portal players, a lot of new bodies, and they're off to a 3-3 start. Safe to say that Hail Mary was huge. It's huge. I mean, they'd be 2-4 in this game. It was the Dana Holgorsen Bowl because they played West Virginia. Donovan Smith, their quarterback, hit a Hail Mary on the final play of the game. Tip drill. They win the game, a game that they were leading 35-24 with like 4.5 minutes to go, Mike, and they let it get away. They let West Virginia score 2 quick touchdowns, take the lead with 12 seconds to go, and it looked like they were going to cough this thing up. They get the Hail Mary to save it. Safe to say Houston's got to be in a pretty happy mindset to have won that ball game. Their first Big 12 win.
It could have been a $20 million play. When you add in Dana Holgerson's buyout and what it would cost to get a new coach. He left West Virginia thinking that he could do at Houston what he couldn't do there in the Big 12. I think he had an idea that this was the path in which the Cougars were taking. There was a $1 million, reward put into his contract that if they got to the Big 12, he got a bump up and stuff. So it felt like he left West Virginia for Houston, knowing that Houston could get into the Big 12. Your team can't be behind the one that you left, right? Like, you got to be able to beat the team that you left. With Texas coming up, with Kansas State after that, had they lost that West Virginia game, they're 2-4. Looking at a 2-5 after Texas, a 2-6 against Kansas State, and so all of a sudden, what is that program? And so it's amazing in college football how thin the margins can be. And that one Hail Mary, that one tip drill, the personal foul penalty on West Virginia after scoring the touchdown that allowed Houston to field position to then make that Hail Mary. All of that stuff came together to get them at 3-3 and feeling a much better about their program than they would at 2-4 going into Houston. There's just a big difference between being 3-3 going in this game and 2-4 going in this game. And I think, it's kept a lot of the talk about Holgerson's hot seat and what that is going to be off the radar over the last 10 days because they're still so excited over that win. So a huge win for Houston. That should allow them to bring some momentum into this one.
Yeah, agreed. Longhorns are favored by 3 touchdowns or more, 21 points. Longhorns currently ranked in the ESPN overall SP Power Poll, number 5 in the country right now. That's the algorithm, the power ranking. Houston at the S&P Plus ranking is 59. So 5 versus 60, and that's the split. Let's start with the Texas offense against a leaky U of H defense. It's brought to you by Brain Vault and the Brain Vault technology, the patented technology we've been telling you about now. Revolutionary, backed by science, patented mouth guard that has been proven to help reduce the risk of concussions. We've told you that Dr. Greg Eckert, my dentist, with this beautiful white smile that he restored, also works with Drew Pittman, an agent in the NFL. And for 8 years, Drew's clients in the NFL, over 100 players, have worn the Brain Vault technology with no concussions reported, which is pretty unbelievable. But it's true, and it's research-based. It absolutely works by optimally aligning the lower jaw in a position that strengthens the neck muscles to minimize concussive forces. Think of it like shock absorbers for your noggin. You're taking the shock in the right places. The Brain Vault technology helps you with that, and it's they've now taken that technology being used in the NFL to a retail brand, so you can get your athlete in a contact sport fitted for the Brain Vault technology and help them play hard but play safer. We've got entire football teams, high school teams, Vandergrift, Lake Travis, Hyde Park, and many more across Austin and Central Texas that have been fitted for the entire team for the safety precautions and the things that it provides. Also, individual young athletes can get fitted for, if they're in cheerleading or lacrosse or soccer, football, whatever it might be. And all you have to do is go to the website, brainvault.com. That's brainvault.com. Join the movement now. Play hard, but play safe with Brain Vault. All right, Mike, Texas offense, among the best in all of college football, but the red zone is where they bog down. Steve Sarkisian said this week, we sat with our coaches and said, look, we move the ball way too well. We have way too many weapons to be 120th in red zone. We should have more points on the board. And I think what we saw in the first 6 games, Mike, and we talk about the Texas offense, it's become a strategy for opposing teams to say, look, let's just not give up the big play. Let's keep everything in front of us. Let's make them earn it. And if they kick some field goals or Bert Auburn misses some field goals, we're right in this ball game. We saw Wyoming do it. We saw Rice do it. We've seen, Oklahoma was able to hold Texas out of the red zone. It's been a troubling thing that obviously is the biggest factor that they've got to get figured out here because they have to score more points. They got to score more touchdowns.
Yeah, I was talking to my grandfather about it. We talk a lot about Texas football, and it's fun kind of being the guy that tells him about Texas football rather than him being the one that tells me about Texas football the rest of my life. And he pointed out something I hadn't really thought about. Texas doesn't really have a pounder. They don't have a big, strong running back that can get that 1 or 2 yards, on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 or 3rd and goal or 4th and goal. And we saw that against Oklahoma. They have the 1st and goal on the goal line. They try to pound it in there. They give the ball to the running back 3 straight times, and they just can't move anybody, even with Byron Murphy in there and Tavondre Sweat and the big package and all that kind of stuff. They don't have that guy that can meet a middle linebacker in the hole and get you 2 yards and fall forward. And so you have to get creative. You know, you're not going to be able to out physical guys on the red zone. I mean, you should be able to out physical Houston. But, you know, when you're up against Oklahoma and some of those better teams, they're going to have to get creative. They haven't been great at just pounding it in so far this year. And so I think that's up to Sark and the minds he has on that staff at the analyst role and as assistants to kind of come up with creative, different ways to put their players in positions to go score in the red zone. Because clearly the stuff he thought was going to work that he went into the season calling hadn't worked through 6 games. The good news is Houston's pretty bad in the red zone. They've allowed 85.7% of points in the red zone scoring stuff, 68% of touchdowns. So 25 trips into the red zone for opponents, 17 of those have been touchdowns. And so this should be a good matchup for Texas to kind of get rid of some of those issues.
Agreed. And but this is, you know, you got to think Houston's going to try the same thing. Try to, hey guys, no giving up the big plays. Now they gave up 391 passing yards to Garrett Green in West Virginia last Thursday night. They're 114th in total defense. They don't do a lot well on that side of the ball. Their strength is probably their offense with Donovan Smith in this receiver core. But it's got to be something that Sark really wants to work on, because it's got to be something. And look, it's one thing to score touchdowns without ever getting into the red zone, and that's fine too. Long runs, long passes. You never get inside the 20-yard line. You just, you know, hit big plays. And that could happen too. But it's something they, you know, when you see games coming with a big physical team like BYU or Kansas State, beyond that, TCU and Fort Worth, Iowa State, you're going to have to get better at that red zone. So we'll see how they go about it. It's almost like you got your midterm. you got the midterm rough draft didn't go great because you lost to Oklahoma and they exposed you in some things. And now you got to go fix those things. We'll get to see some of that. But you're right. Maybe Houston doesn't provide the big thing. The other factor I would say, and I don't disagree with your grandfather, you know, Jatavion Sanders being back and hopefully healthy helps, because I think we've seen the biggest red zone struggles against Kansas and Oklahoma when he got hurt, right? It happened right at the beginning and early on in the Kansas game, and they didn't have the big body, either his blocking and his height and receiving ability, to be a factor the defenses had to take into account. That, you know, he should be back and healthy. And as far as the thumper back, I mean, it was Roschon Johnson last year without a doubt, and, you know, Bijan, but Roschon was such a great short yardage back, to your grandfather's point. We've had some folks, including my friend Jerry Hamilton at Inside Texas, suggest maybe Savion Red, you know, not even in just the Wildcat package, the Red Cat, but as a running back. I mean, you got to find that guy that's going to find that crease, has that vision, and as you said, can carry a linebacker or a DB into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure out creative ways to do it. And, you know, and I think a lot of teams are running into this because the world of football is becoming a speed sport, not a power sport. Like when my grandfather was at Texas, and for most of his 50-year career in college football, it was about being bigger, badder, and tougher than the dudes across from you. And now it's become more about being faster. You know, it's like war. You know, war used to be won with tanks. Now it's won with airplanes. Kind of that same premise. The problem is occasionally you need a tank. Occasionally you've got to run over somebody. And the way Texas's roster is constructed, they just don't have that dude. I think CJ Baxter ends up becoming, you know, a bigger back once he has a couple off seasons, once he gets into the weight room and has a full off season, kind of grows up, gets out of his teenage body. I think he's positioned to be that guy, but he's still young and he hasn't been able to handle hits all that well as a true freshman with his ups and downs with the injuries coming off the field. And so Jonathan Brooks has been great. I'm not trying to take anything away from JB, but he's just not the guy on 3rd and 1 that's just like run it right up the middle, going to run over the linebacker. And so, yeah, trying to find a Savion Red or using Ewers' feet a little bit more, or getting creative in any type of way that you can to get those red zone points is crucial, because as we saw in the Red River, you're going to have a game or two a year, even if you're outstanding. You're going to have a couple of games where it's going to come down to the thin margins, the small margins like that. That seems to be a hole in Texas's roster, and it's up to Sark and those guys on the offensive side of the ball to scheme their way away from it.
Yeah, 100%. And Longhorns should be able to score. I think, you know, on the morning show I do here in Austin on the Horn, Rod Babers and I have talked about it either being a shootout or a blowout, right? Texas is either going to win this going away, or they're going to be in a bit of a shootout because they should be able to, I don't want to say name the score, but if Garrett Green, who's kind of just a pedestrian quarterback at West Virginia, and they've been winning on defense, can shred you for 400. This Dana Holgorsen team has some issues on the defensive side of the ball. That's safe to say, Mike. They're not super talented on that side.
They're not. I mean, they have a couple of good players. Defensive tackle that I can't pronounce his name. He's told me like 6 times, but I can't pronounce it. Defensive tackle. The defensive tackle is really good. Nelson Caesar on the edge is a solid pass rusher. But they just don't have the second level and third level guys to keep up with Texas's athletes. And so if Texas is able to block them up front, which I imagine they will be able to do pretty consistently, Quinn Ewers are going to have a ton of time, and they just do not have the athletes on the back end to keep up with Xavier Worthy and AD Mitchell and Jordan Whittington and everybody else that we could list for the Longhorns.
All right, so should be a padding stat kind of game for the offense. Coming off the bye week with freshness, should be able to go get it and put some points up. The big question will come on the defensive side, which we'll get to coming up. I do want to tell you that our show is also presented by another one of our founding partners, One Source Gas of Central Texas. That's One Source Gas, my buddy Richard Strever and his great team. If you have compressed gas needs, if you're a business that has bar taps, a restaurant, that's very important. Obviously, you got to be able to pull the bar taps. If you are in the medical industry or veterinary industry and you use the compressed gas and you need it on the daily and weekly, let One Source Gas be your spot. There's a reason they're growing like they are. Started as a small company here in Austin. They've grown to where they're in the San Marcos and down into San Antonio now because they simply do it better. They do not make you wait. It's always on time. You're always getting the gases you need early in the morning. Special focus on customer service, help clients get that, because look, without it, you can't do your job. You can't make money that you need to make to support your restaurant or your business, and they are going to supply the compressed gas needs you have better than anybody. One Source Gas, ATX.com is the website. That's One Source Gas. Make sure you spell out the word one, by the way, not the number. Go with One Source Gas, ATX.com. One Source Gas, your compressed gas leader, helping us as a presenting partner and a founding sponsor of the Eyes on Texas multicast. All right, before we get to the defense versus the Houston offense, Mike, I want to mention this as kind of our halftime segment. Congrats. This is the Longhorns with the bye week coming mid-season. We know what they've done for 6 weeks now, in 6 games. It's something we talked about all summer during the talking season, Mike, that some things could be special. Well, now the Longhorns have put themselves in that opportunity. They could play their way to the college football playoff. They still control that, being number 8 in the country, number 1 ranked, 1-loss team. And a lot of teams are going to get knocked off in front of them, and they could face Oklahoma again in that Big 12 title game, which would send them. Also, individual players. We talked about when are the Longhorns going to get back to being on awards lists and finalists for big awards, Heisman trophies, and those kind of things. Well, look, Steve Sarkisian named to the Bryant Award watch list, Coach of the Year. He's one of 26 coaches. Also, DJ Kinney on that list as well from Texas State. Congratulations to him. But the Lombardi Award by the Rotary Club of Houston this week has announced 5 different Longhorns. 5th most players in the country on the interior are on their watch list as well at the midseason. On defense, it's Tavondre Sweat and Jalen Ford. On offense, it's Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones, the right and left tackle, and it's Jatavion Sanders. So those guys are all being watched. Also have to think with the injury to Brock Bowers, Mike, over at Georgia, the Mackey Award. I haven't seen a watch list come out, but Jatavion Sanders is a guy that could be in line to do special things with a Mackey Award that a Longhorn player has never won before. I would also put the Doak Walker out there now. It's really realistic, Mike. Talk about Jonathan Brooks. He's one of the nation's leaders in rushing yards per game, yards per carry. He's having a heck of a year. That's got to become something to keep an eye on because I know he made some mid-season All-American teams at running back. So really some good stuff happening for the Longhorns. We know they have receivers that could be on for Biletnikoff kind of conversations. That's when it's fun. It means you have good players, and now they've got a chance to go do something special, not just as a team, but also at the individual levels.
I think the most impressive or the one that they're probably most proud of is that I think it's called the Joe Moore Award, whatever they give to the best offensive line group, and that they're a part of that as well. And just I guess I always go back to Sark's, one of his first press conferences when he got to Texas and talking about needing big humans and needing to get the offensive line going, and that they couldn't have a true spring game because of the lack of depth along the offensive line. They haven't had a first-round offensive lineman since, I don't even know when. I can't remember off the top of my head at this point. It's been so long. And so to have one of the better offensive line units in year 3 and for Kyle Flood and that offensive line group to have this much talent, to be this good that quickly, I think is the greatest sign for this university and a big sign for this program.
Well said. Yeah, Joe Moore Award there on that mid-season keep an eye on it list. And that's, that's all out in front of you now. Texas knows that. They've for the most part, handled their business in the first 6 games. We didn't think Texas was going to go undefeated, so they've taken their loss. But now they got to go be clean the rest of the way. And that leads us to our next deep dive into this Texas-Houston matchup with the Texas defense against the Houston offense. That's going to be brought to you by Hayes City Store in Driftwood. Speaking of beer taps and bar taps and compressed gases, they use our friends at One Source Gas. But Hayes City Store in Driftwood, They're the best. We'll tell you about their scratch-made comfort food and how you should get out there, be watching football as the temperatures come down. The weather's been phenomenal the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you're getting out to Hayes City Store, the destination location that it is. But, Mike, the Texas defense has really been the most consistent unit for the Longhorns. They're currently ranked, top 11 in total defense in a lot of categories. But that defense took some knocks. You felt like against Oklahoma, if you could score in the 30s, which you did, this defense would keep Oklahoma under that. They did not. They gave up 34 points. They let Dillon Gabriel get loose on the run game. I do think Dillon Gabriel's able to spring that, kind of save it for Texas, which they didn't adjust too well. Too many rushing yards for the quarterbacks, too many missed tackles in individual matchups on the outside, and obviously the 2-minute drill was really not good. Those are all things I'm assuming Pete Kwiatkowski and the defensive side worked on with their week off.
Yeah, a lot to talk about there. I mean, I thought the defense played against Oklahoma pretty well for the most part, outside of the 2-minute drills. At the end of the first half, Oklahoma went down and got a field goal. At the end of the second half, Oklahoma goes down and gets a touchdown. That's the difference in the game. They held up pretty well with the turnovers and the poor play of the offense in the first half. But as you mentioned, too many missed tackle, a lot of assignment, not sound football that they had played in the first 6 games or the first 5 games. Cost them against Oklahoma. I think some of that's just playing against a better team. Oklahoma had a starting quarterback out there. They had a solid offensive line. They have Oklahoma level players on the edge. And so it was the first time Texas had seen kind of competition like that. I don't know if Alabama has the playmakers that even Oklahoma has. And so I think the defense is going to be okay. I think they're definitely going to be okay in this game. The big test that Houston's going to put forward isn't necessarily the run game. Their offensive line isn't great. Parker Jenkins has been a really good true freshman running back, but nothing tremendous on the running game. But they do have really good wide receivers. Sam Brown's a good wide receiver. Matthew Golden's a good wide receiver. And so that's going to be the test for Texas, is covering in space. Holgerson's absolutely going to try to isolate these safeties and get them in one-on-one coverage. That's what the air raid offense is attempting to do anyway. And so it's not going to nothing Houston's going to do is going to confuse Texas's defense. It's just going to try to put them into one-on-one situations, isolate defenders, and make them make plays. It's going to be up to Texas to do that.
Agreed. And I think it's kind of like Oklahoma light. I mean, they do have a pass-based offense. Houston was hurt at the end of their spring when Alton McCaskill, their running back, transferred to Colorado, right? And he was supposed to be their leading ground gainer and running back. So now they're going with the freshman and Parker Jenkins, who's just an okay, young guy trying to learn his way. But so now they're built around the pass with the receivers you mentioned. Sam Brown's a really good player. And Donovan Smith's a guy the Longhorns have seen at quarterback. He's a big 6'5", 240-pound quarterback. He beat Texas last year as the quarterback at Oklahoma. So he's not Dillon Gabriel, but in that air raid system, his legs will be important. And one of the things Sark talked about a lot this week, Mike, and through the bye week, was rush lanes. If you think about it for Texas, you have a quarterback who can take off and run, and Donovan Smith can. If you get out of your rush lanes, well, that allows then the middle of that interior offensive line to get to your second level, start blocking your linebackers, right? So now you got Jalen Ford getting caught up with a center. That leaves things wide open with you got DBs in coverage. That's something they need to work on. Yes, I know they've pressed sacking the quarterback and pressuring the quarterback and getting them on the ground and forcing turnovers, but you've also got to stay within the integrity and structure of your defensive rush lanes. That's big, and it'll be looked at again tomorrow. And
he's a big dude, as you mentioned. So a lot of his damage he does in the run game isn't necessarily off script or outside. It's on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. You saw Texas Tech go for it last year when he was their quarterback like 6 or 7 times in that second half. And a lot of those plays were quarterback run forward out of like a single wing type situation and go get you a yard or two because he's such a big body. And so it's going to be a good test for Texas. Obviously, they have some familiarity with him. And Donovan Smith's one of those guys that he gets really streaky. He started off really bad against West Virginia. The first quarter against West Virginia was awful. And then he was like 16 of 16 the rest of the way. And he's kind of done that throughout his career, even at Texas Tech, where he has those big, 21 of 24 for 310 yards and 3 touchdown games. And then he has kind of the 17 of 35, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions games. And so if you're Texas, you want to make him uncomfortable. You want to get in on his feet. You want to get some pressure into his face. Because when he has a clean pocket, Donovan Smith can make all those throws. When he gets a little hurried, he's prone to mistakes. And so to me, this is going to be about Texas's defensive line and their ability to create pressure and create havoc in the backfield, not only against the run, but also against the pass.
Agreed 100%. And he's a big guy. And, his game against West Virginia, streaky, but at the end, good, 21 to 27, 253 and 4 touchdowns, including that Hail Mary. Obviously, he had a rushing touchdown in that game too. So, big game in the victory.
I think he started 0 for 5 or 0 for 6 and then went 21
Yep.
of 21. Like, it was something insane like that. So he can get on a roll if he's given time.
And he's went the other way. If you go back to their game at Texas Tech, they lost 49-28. He had a big first half, and they were right there with it. And he didn't do much in the second half because they ended up with 28. Right, they had 28 at the half. Yeah. Didn't score in the second half against Texas Tech. So we can go both ways. Texas would like to force him into one of those bad streaks coming up on Saturday at 3:00. Donovan Smith, the quarterback, headlined against Quinn Ewers, of course, with the Texas Longhorns. But are you in agreement with that it's a shootout or a blowout for Texas? A game that if the defense is leaky and Donovan Smith gets hot, gets streaky, it turns into a high-scoring game. If not, Texas should win comfortably. And we'll get to your final prediction coming up. But do you feel like that's kind of the jive of this game?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's hard for me to imagine Houston keeping Texas under 30. They're allowing 31.8, I believe, on the season to everybody as a season total. And so, this offense is going to be the best, if not the second, but one of the best, probably the best offense that Houston has seen. And so I'd imagine Texas gets into the 40s, especially if the game is close and they need to keep scoring. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. This is about Houston's offense and their ability to score points, because if they can keep scoring points, this thing gets close, right? This thing gets crazy. But I don't see this one being one of those 11-11, 14-14 kind of fourth quarter games where Texas has to extend itself there. If anything, it's going to be like 35-32 going into the fourth quarter if this thing is close.
Yeah, and Fox TV will be happy for that. They like the high-scoring games. We'll see. You mentioned Samuel Brown as their leading receiver. Maybe one of the best names in the Big 12 is their second leading receiver, Joseph Manjack. That's a great name. He's got 3 touchdowns. Matthew Golden's the one that if Sark could get one of those guys, he probably want Matthew Golden. He's a speedster, smaller guy, but can really go. Also great on kick return.
Yeah. He's got 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. They've been big plays in 2 of their 3 wins that have really kind of turned momentum there. So yeah, that's something that Texas is going to have to really be cognizant about, because as we've mentioned, this is a mismatch. Texas is a 23.5-point favorite. They're better on the offensive line. They're better on the defensive line. They have better skill positions. Their quarterbacks, but like Texas has the advantage at every single spot, except for maybe special teams. That's where this can get weird, right? If Houston's able to get a score or 2, or at least set up a score or 2 through special teams, a punt block, Texas misses a couple field goals, like that's how Houston's going to have to win this football game, or at least just stay in this football game.
Well, let me mention there our special teams look. We brought to you by Hayes City Store, right there in Driftwood, Texas, between Kyle and Driftwood, Wimberley. If you live in Dripping Springs, it's a great, easy trip over. Same for anybody in South Austin. It is a destination location, especially when the weather turns like it is now. Spectacular during the days, cooler at nights, but they've got the big canopy of oak trees and live music. You watch all the sports on the inside ice house there. It's an outdoor but indoor, covered and everything. It is perfect for any occasion. Big events, big birthdays, big gatherings if you want to do that, or just you and some friends or you and the wife hanging out. Hayes City Store, sit on the patio like I like to do, and at the bar there in the ice house and watch all the games, football, baseball, Astros, Rangers in the playoffs right now. Great spot. Hayes City Store, FM 150 in Driftwood, Texas. 8989 is their actual address. The ice house is great. They're doing some construction out there, so be advised when you get out there. One of the big parking lots is not being used because they're putting in a bigger septic system. So because they're getting so many people out there, they got to grow. New bathrooms are going in out there. That's underway. So park in the big lot behind Hayes City Store in the main lot there when you get out there. It's Hayes City Store. Find them online in their complete mouth-watering menu at HayesCityStoreTX.com. That's HayesCityStoreTX.com. You mentioned it, Mike. The special teams could be a big factor. On the road, Dana Holgerson has said, man, just like Dave Aranda said, he said, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times, just beat Texas, just beat Texas, just beat Texas. Obviously didn't work very good for Dave Aranda because his team's not very good. We'll see if Dana Holgerson can flip it. And if he can, you got to feel like maybe special teams, as you said, is a place with some of your speedsters, create a big play. But Steve Sarkisian said the same thing. Look, we want more explosion out of our special teams. We've been okay, but we've missed too many kicks on our field goals. We need more explosion with Xavier Worthy at punt return, and we need to block a kick, which they did. It was a huge play in the Oklahoma game when things were getting out of control early. So special teams will be a factor that you need to watch in this game.
And the coverage teams have been pretty good. Maybe I'm missing a play or two, but I can't remember a real big return for an opponent against Texas. And so that's a good sign for the Longhorns. They have so much depth and so much talent, so much youth that they should be good on coverage teams. I have been surprised that they haven't popped one on a punt return or a kick return yet, just because of how good those guys are as returners, and just the amount of athletes that Texas has in the back end. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Houston's only route to success here are to steal some points, whether that be through special teams or through turnovers or whatever freaky plays that they're able to kind of create off script. Because one-on-one, matchup to matchup, offense versus defense, defense versus offense, it just does not feel like Houston has many routes to beat this Texas team, or frankly, even to keep it close.
All right, Mike. So the special teams will be a factor without a doubt. It might be the one strength that Houston has in this game against Texas. Oklahoma game was kind of back and forth with special teams as well. That will be a factor, and that's brought to you by Hayes City Store and Ice House. Ryan Sanborn's been great punting for Texas. Bert Auburn needs to make those kicks. Those are going to be important. But if the Longhorns, you're hoping they're extra points, which would tell the sign of the red zone improvement for there. For sure. But Texas should be able to put a big number on the board here if they have improved in the categories we're talking about. Let's wrap this thing up with our final predictions. Maybe a look around the Big 12 real quick, Mike, with Texas playing the 3 o'clock game, but there are some interesting games elsewhere. Final quarter on our final conversation will be brought to you by a man, Carlos Carrion, TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. That's the, remember, you make sure that D, that's important. TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. When it's time for a new mortgage or refi, you want someone who, like you, loves Texas football, Texas sports, lifelong Austinite, lifelong Longhorn fan, but he also knows this market like the back of his hand. There's no doubt about that. He's been here his whole life, and he's right with his finger on the pulse of what's happening right now with interest rates and everything happening. You still need to buy a house, and it's still a good time to buy a house, Carlos would tell you. Or, refi might not be right now, but as soon as it is, he'll let you know. But that's the name to remember, TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. Carlos Carrion. Find him at that website, TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. Not there to just provide you a quote. He's your guide to help solve problems, strategize one of the most important financial decisions of your life at TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. All right, Mike, your final prediction. You like Texas to cover the 23, or you probably won't touch this game? I think most people would advise not to, but what do you think?
Yeah, give me Texas to cover this thing. I think I'm going 40-13, something in that range. I feel like this looks like the Kansas game, where maybe it's a little close in the first half. Fans are a little frustrated that the Longhorns aren't executing, and you look up and they covered and won by 20-plus points.
What is the? I've never been in this stadium. I've seen it from the outside, but what is it? They've handled Alabama. They handled the Waco blackout. I mean, they've been in the Cotton Bowl for that game. Any concern here? It's going to be a sold out 40,000, but not the toughest environment.
Yeah, not the toughest environment, and I'd imagine 20,000 of those are Longhorn fans. This is getting sold out because it's Texas, not because of Houston, and so I think the Houston fans are going to be rowdy. The students are going to be rowdy. This is a very important game for Houston. A lot of them believe that Texas is the reason they weren't allowed in the Big 12 in the first place, right? And so this is an important game, especially for kind of the older fans that were around for the Southwest Conference breakup and what happened with the Big 12. It's obviously important for the students because anytime you play, the state university, that's going to be important. But yeah, this isn't going to be Alabama or Baylor or Red River or any of those type of environments the Longhorns have already excelled in.
And Mike will be there covering the game for Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and of course for us here in the Eyes on Texas multicast. I too will take Texas to cover. I think they come out strong here. I watched that Houston game with West Virginia. Their defense is not good. Texas should put up a big number, win the lines of scrimmage handily, and be pretty sharp. They know there are big things ahead for them. If they don't cover, I think there's something wrong for Texas in this matchup. Houston 3-3, but really should be 2-4 if not for a Hail Mary play on the last play of the game last Thursday night. A couple others real quick, Mike. The West Virginia-Oklahoma State game's interesting. Both are 4-2. Iowa State is going to take the week off, but they're sitting at 3-1. Oklahoma will face Central Florida. Any other thing around them? Texas Tech's at BYU. What else stands out for you around the Big 12 right now?
I mean, I guess for me, just for what my job is, I'll be tuned into that Baylor-Cincinnati game just to see what Dave Aranda's Bears are. I mean, I think there's a real – I kind of thought going into this year there's a possibility Baylor goes 6-6 and that hot seat really starts warming up for Aranda. If they end up going 4-8, it may already be hot, right? They may already be talking about that stuff behind the scenes. The AD's already come out and kind of talked about, kind of give them that, we believe in Dave and we think he's the guy for the job type of deal. And so we'll see what's going on with Baylor. They had their off week last week, just like Texas. If they're able to come out and beat Big 12 newcomer Cincinnati, maybe that quiets some of that talk down. If they go 2-5 and lose to Cincinnati, all of a sudden the wheels are going to fall off there in Waco, and it's going to get interesting pretty fast. And it's always hard, as a reporter on the private school side, because you don't know what the buyouts are or like what the contract is exactly and stuff like that. So Waco is going to be one I'm watching pretty interestingly. And then also TCU playing against Kansas State. I feel like that's an important one as well for the state of Texas. Josh Hoover played really well at quarterback last week for TCU, threw four touchdowns. And it's one of those weird storylines where did Sonny Dykes not know who the best quarterback is on his roster 2 years in a row? I mean, like last year, Chandler Morris gets injured, and that allows Max Duggan to come in off the bench and then go be the Heisman Trophy winner, runner-up, and lead them to a college football playoff. And then if you just watch last week against BYU, it definitely looked like Hoover was the better quarterback, at least for that offense, than Morris was as well. So maybe an injury at quarterback kind of helps TCU out of their offensive funk for the second straight year in a row.
Yeah, he was awesome. I was up in Fort Worth, up in Denton actually last week, and watched that game pretty closely. It was never close. And Josh Hoover, the redshirt freshman from Rockwall, Texas, Heath High School, he was outstanding. Now, K-State, who both TCU and Kansas State are on the Longhorn future schedules coming up, right? The home game with K-State, the road trip to Fort Worth. K-State also brought in a young quarterback, Avery Johnson, not the former basketball player, and he ran for 5 touchdowns. He's a former track guy, 4-star recruit who chose K-State over Oregon and Washington coming out of high school. He was Mr. Kansas football, and he went to K-State. He's a true freshman, and Will Howard's fighting for his job right now. And Chris Kleiman was asked about that. He said he brought the legs. He brought the quarterback run game that we need and want in our offense to be more dynamic. So keep an eye on that game. That's a 6 o'clock kick Saturday night, the Purple Kryptonite game, TCU and Kansas State from Manhattan. Important because the Longhorns will play both of those teams in the coming weeks. Obviously, BYU is the next opponent next week, 2:30 kick. That's been announced at DKR. First home game in a month for the Longhorns will be next Saturday with Texas Tech playing BYU. That's one to keep an eye on, obviously. Obviously, we'll be all watching Houston and Texas. Longhorns a 23.5-point favorite now. It opened right around 20.5. Keep an eye on it. Texas 5-1, looking to go to 6-1. Houston is 3-3. And we look forward to it. Certainly, we'll have a full recap on Monday. The new episode will drop on Tuesday. Brought to you by our presenting partner at Grande Equipment. Also, our other founding partners that help us out with Hayes City Store and Ice House. Carlos Carrion, the Texas mortgage guy. Dr. Greg Eckert for his dental work and his Brain Vault technology. And, of course, Grande Equipment, bringing it to you at a very high level each and every week. Mike, it's the multicast, keeps you on top of all things Texas football. It's available to watch weekly on the Dave Campbell's and the Horn in Austin's YouTube pages and channels. It's also available for download through iTunes and Spotify or wherever you find podcasts. Mike, enjoy the game tonight at UTEP. Enjoy the game at Houston, and we'll talk on Monday.
Yes, sir. Talk to you then.